up in the air. Come on. And what we gonna do right here? Come on. See, these Hispanic syndicate motherfuckers, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Hey, everybody. You can start moseying to your seats.
Yeah, that kind of funky. Let me see you put your hand.
All right. Wow, what a crowd. Thank you all for coming to join for this Climate Week event. I'm Evan Shapiro. I'm a co-founder and CTO of Sofar Ocean, where you all are. We've got a couple of pretty exciting panels lined up, and then after that, a happy hour. First, I'm going to kick things off with a quick intro to where you are, what we do here, and I'll start with a brag, which is that last year we saved around 27,000 metric tons of bunker fuel. That's 86 metric tons of CO2 emissions, equivalent of around 20,000 internal combustion engine vehicles, offset in partnership with the shipping industry by making better decisions on the open seas. Woohoo! So how did we do that? It's a fun story, so come take a wander with me. You'll see around these yellow beach ball things all over the place. These are actually ocean sensors. They're all part of our Spotter platform, which is a low-cost, scalable, accessible sensing platform. We make and deploy thousands of these things in the open ocean, and with our customers, they're connected with satellite and cellular telemetry, solar powered, really flexible and configurable. And we put them in the water. So we throw them off of ships, we throw them out of airplanes. We've had people put on a pair of fins and swim them out and drop them off near a beach. We deploy a lot of them with our cargo shipping customers and partners. We work with defense and other entities to get as many of these out in the water. And the scale is unprecedented. So you can see the seeding of our initial grid back in 2019 and 2020 on the left there. You can see a snapshot of what it looks like to have thousands of sensors out in the ocean. And what we do with all these is we soak up all of the data. We do some math, that's the easy part, right? And we have the best predictions of what the open ocean weather conditions are right now, anywhere out there in the water, as well as what they will be tomorrow and the days ahead. So we have these best-in-class weather forecasts. And you can see this animation down on the bottom. That's not weather moving around, that's error moving around, which is really cool. That's like the error in weather predictions that we're monitoring and traveling around the globe and we can correct for. With that, though, there's then one more layer, which is the most critical, where all the value comes in, which is turning that data, turning that knowledge into decisions, into insights. How do you decide to turn left instead of right? How do you decide to go out and service your infrastructure or not? How do you know if the bluff with all the houses on them is going to collapse in this storm or not? And so our first focus in this regard is the Wayfinder application. It is a route optimization application. It's kind of like Google Maps for cargo ships, but instead of routing around street traffic, we are routing around weather resistance. So you can imagine that as a vessel is going through the oceans, the waves, the winds, the currents, they can all stack up to slow it down or sometimes speed it up. And if you don't know what those are, you can't take advantage of it. But if you do, you can optimize. And so that is how we got from throwing sensors in the water to doing a bunch of data collection and intelligence and math to actually making really tangible impact on decarbonization in the maritime space. Really relevant, our first panel is going to be on maritime decarbonization. This is also a good example of how we at Sofar are trying to prime the pump in the blue economy to make ocean data more valuable and accessible to people who don't care about it because they don't know how to use it, but they should. What we're building is a platform. Wayfinder is an amazing application. We are investing a lot in understanding this shipping domain. We have a lot more value that we can add there. There's a lot more ships out on the ocean that we are going to help save time and money and fuel. But these problems are broad. The tools that we need to solve them, there's a lot of overlap. Every challenge on the ocean needs sensing, it needs data, it needs analysis and modeling, and it needs intelligence to turn that into decisions. And that is what we're trying to build here. So for shameless plug time, I'm not going to try and sell you a spotter. I won't sell you a Wayfinder unless you own a shipping company. If you do, you should definitely talk to us. But we do have a number of openings right now. We are growing. We have several engineering positions, marketing, and on our manufacturing side. If you are interested, if you know anyone who's interested, please take a snapshot of the QR code and send them our careers page. So before we get to the first panel, I'm going to hand it over to Matt Klassen, who's the executive director of TMA BlueTech, and he'll give us a presentation, and then we'll jump over to David Hume for the first panel. So thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, just flip through like right there. Perfect. Excellent. Thank you. Let's try this real quick. There we go. Sweet. All right. Hello. It's wonderful to be here. And I'm really happy that as an organization that's based in San Diego, we start to see some, significant involvement in the Bay Area. And this is, it's accelerated very quickly. It's almost surprising, shocking, amazing, and fantastic to see what's happening up here now. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview about TMA BlueTech. But first, I'm going to start with some statistics for the San Diego region and the impact of the blue economy. Now, this was from numbers from 2020. Right, and we commissioned this report to be a follow-up to a report that was written in 2012 to talk about the value of the blue economy and why it's a good investment. So this was put on by the former deputy chief economist of NOAA. It's not our report. She was the one who pulled together these numbers, so these are her results. In 2020 alone, San Diego had 4,320 maritime, water, and blue technology business establishments. From 12 to 20, there was a 169% increase in employment, and that was including a COVID year, which is very exciting. And of course, an 18% increase in revenues, also very exciting. This was a $16.2 billion industry. And when multiplying with applying the economic multiplier, which I'll get to on the next page, then it's just over 36 billion in overall economic impact for San Diego alone. And this employs more than 114,000 people. And in 2020, the blue tech only businesses employed about 24,000 people altogether in San Diego alone. So these are the multipliers. You don't know what a multiplier is, I'll tell you. For every dollar you put in, you get a certain dollar amount out in economic activity. So in San Diego alone, for every dollar that was put in, we get $2.26 of impact. And if you compare that with other sectors in California, blue tech is a good investment. So it's basically telling you, like, this is for policymakers, investment in the blue tech space is a good investment for your constituencies. I'll tell you a little bit about TMA. So we envision a world where ocean and water technologies coexist seamlessly with thriving ocean ecosystems. We were founded in 2007, and we're the first and largest ocean and water technologies cluster in the US. For those who don't know what a cluster organization is, means we are a 501c6 nonprofit industry organizer. We work with policymakers, industry, academia, funding or funders as well, VCs, investors, to advance ocean and water technologies. We're a member-based organization, so right now we have 116 members, most of which are in Southern California, but we do have some members up here in San Francisco, about 10 member organizations in the Northeast, and we have members in 8 countries around the world as well. We also work closely with the U.S. Department of Commerce to lead trade missions. I'll get to that in just a bit. And then basically what we want to do is connect our constituency, our members, to commercial opportunities or workforce development opportunities. And we do that via events, international trade missions, site visits, discussions much like this, roundtable events as well. Like I just said, this is where we have some of our smattering of member companies. These are our main partners in the San Diego region. So as you can see, there are some significant organizations there that are involved. We meet with most of these organizations once a month to discuss what we're doing and how to advance the blue tech space in San Diego. That's a recent development too, by the way. It's just been since October of last year that we have all come together. Hey, it's getting super exciting right now, and a lot of elements are coming together to advance and accelerate this space more quickly than we would have imagined. And so we do work together very closely with these organizations. Blue Tech Cluster Alliance, since we're a cluster, we have 12 other clusters around the world with whom we operate or function with. So if one of our members wants to connect with the Norwegian market, then okay, we'll connect you with our cluster company over there, and that they can help you connect to the Norwegian space for export opportunities. A couple of fun international organizations, European Space Agency. We're a part of their Maritime Sustainability Task Force. That's exciting. And then, of course, the French Space Agency as well. Satellite applications and how they apply to the ocean space is fascinating. Of course, I also want to say Vanessa Scott is here with Scripps Institution of Oceanography. Last year, they were the recipient of a NOAA grant that is all about regional accelerators for the ocean tech space, ocean resilience. And so they won one of those 4 grants. It's super competitive. And so that's basically taking 14 million in funding and applying that to the Southern California region in order to advance the space together. And that's real money with real partnerships, and it's a good opportunity. So speak with her. She'll be on the panel as well. She's got the really cool green pants on, and she's blonde hair. She's blonde ambition. She's amazing. And then just some of our activities. I want to say, like, these are our 3 main focus areas. They're not exclusive, but this is where we choose to apply our focus, and it's because of our region. So maritime defense, San Diego is one of the world's largest maritime defense locations in the world. And so there's a lot of investment going on there, especially now along the Pacific Rim being a theater of concern, especially as well as the North Atlantic. So maritime defense is where a lot's going on. And this is exciting too for the ocean resilience and decarbonization space as well, because if we talk about where they're looking, the Navy's looking, they're looking at smaller, faster, more replicable, lower carbonation, like easier ways to recharge autonomous vessels, new fuels, an entire new supply chain and infrastructure on the coastline to supply those needs. It's a big opportunity, and it's fun because it connects to ocean resilience and decarbonization related technologies as well. And we want to find how that happens. So smart maritime systems is another one of our focuses, and ocean resilience technologies. And these are some of our events. Blue Tech Week is our big one. I'll get to that in a second, but we also lead the international trade missions. We just took a trip to Singapore, trade mission to Singapore, took 12 American companies over there to explore commercial opportunities. And I can tell you right now that Singapore is a good market to get into, a very good market. If you want to expand into Asia and find those export opportunities, good. They will pull out the stops to help you get there. So if that's an interest for you, if Asia is an interesting market for you, then we can be the conduit to help you reach that space. Come talk to me about that later if that interests you. And then finally, Blue Tech Month. This is our big annual event. It's in November. This year it's a month. It's usually Blue Tech Week, right? But this year we're going to have a significant engagement with Norway. And we have the consulate of Norway right over here. Make sure to speak with them. For those of you who don't know, pound for pound, Norway is probably the biggest influencer in the ocean technology space. It's freaking amazing, man. So you got to talk to them about what they're doing. We want to show our policymakers, not just here in Northern California, but also in Southern California, why they should be focused on this space and why it's important, and learn from the example of Norway. If they can do it, so can we. We're the world's 5th largest economy. As a state of California, we can impact an incredible amount of the ocean space if we come together and use that as a technology resource. So speak with them. That'll be the first part of Blue Tech Month. The next part 2, will be about local policy engagement and workforce development. And then for number 3, we'll be talking about the maritime defense space and how it connects to ocean resilience and decarbonization related technologies and how there are opportunities for everyone where that's involved. And then, of course, part 4 is the Ocean Resilience Summit with Scripps Institute of Oceanography. It's a great event. We have the sunset afterward, networking, drinks, fun, merriment. It's worth the price of admission just to partake in that. So if that interests you, then see me afterwards. Anyway, I'll be moderating a panel here in just a bit, but that's it for me. And I want to head it back to Evan. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Matt. So we're going to take a few minutes to get set up for the first panel. Now is a great time to use the restrooms if you need to. They're that way right around the corner. If for whatever reason you need to step outside, we ask that you please use a side entrance, which is that way. Keep walking until you find a wall or a door, and you'll find your way out eventually. We just want to avoid disruptions from using this entrance out here. So it'll just be a few minutes, and we'll have our first panel on decarbonization. Oh, I was just muting it. Hang it off. Okay. Are we going to get so doing that. It's almost like that. That's Oh, yeah, I was well, I was like, there were questions on that. This is on, what's the title? Maritime. Oh, yeah.
1, 2, 1, 2. 1.
All right, we are ready to get started. Okay, so for our first panel on maritime decarbonization, I'm going to hand it off to our moderator, David Hume from the Pacific Northwest National Lab.
Great, thanks, Evan. Hello, everyone. How is everyone's climate week going so far? Good, yeah? Quick show of hands. For how many of you is this your first SF Climate Week event, either this week or ever? All right, only a few people, that's great. Well, I hope we get you off to a great start. My name is David Hume. I'm a maritime advisor at the Pacific Northwest National Lab. I'm also the founder of the Liquid Grid, which is a website dedicated to marine clean technologies. We have an awesome lineup of speakers here today that are going to share a really wide, diverse set of viewpoints on the maritime sector. Before they do that, I want to give a very, very quick kind of setting of the scene or give some context on why we're even having this conversation today. I think most people in this room are probably very well aware of the fact the maritime sector is critical to our global economy. We literally cannot have our economy today without the maritime sector. Roughly 90% of all world trade goes by ship. I'm guessing everyone in this room has probably heard that fact before. What you may not have heard and may not realize is that 90% of all world trade is carried on roughly 90,000 ships. That's the approximate size of our global international ocean-going fleet. It's really not that big, relatively speaking. All these ships use large, slow-speed diesel engines. And diesel engine is a little bit of a misnomer. Yes, these ships can and do use diesel fuel, but the vast majority of these ships predominantly use a different type of fuel called heavy fuel oil, which is a residual fuel. And residual means exactly what you think it means. It's what's left over. As we refine raw petroleum, you get a lot of different types of other petroleum products, like kerosene, gasoline, naphthene. All these things are more higher value products. But what's left over is heavy fuel oil. It is quite literally oily sludge. And this is what we give to ships. We use it because it's energy dense. You can get it pretty much anywhere you do petroleum refinement, which is pretty much everywhere. It's relatively cheap, and ships need a lot of energy. I used to work on ships as a merchant mariner. The vessels I used to operate would consume between 200 and 300 tons of fuel every single day when they're operating. That's tons, not gallons. Globally, across the international fleet, this sector uses between 250 and 300 million tons of fuel every single year. The combustion of all that dirty fuel, of course, produces greenhouse gas emissions. That's why we're all here to talk about this very topic today. Globally, that sector produces on average about 1 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions, 1 billion across 90,000 ships. That's about 2 to 3% of all global greenhouse gas emissions across all sectors and all economies. Really impressive, again, when you think about the relative small size of the fleet. But we can do better, and we are. The sector is starting to change. We are at an inflection point. We're in the midst of what I call a maritime energy transition. It's a really exciting time to be in this space, as you're going to hear from these folks here shortly. And so what we're going to talk about today is exactly that maritime energy transition. These folks here today are going to talk about maritime energy and emissions. We're going to first talk about why we're even having this discussion today, why it's topical. We'll talk about the different pathways that can potentially deliver on emissions reductions and the goals we set for ourselves across the sector. And then lastly, and most importantly, we'll talk about the different fuels, tools, and technologies that can help us get there. So this panel will be about an hour long. I have a set of questions I'll be asking each of these folks up here. If you all have your own questions you want to ask them, that is fantastic. I ask that you please keep them to the very end where we have some time for Q&A. And if we don't get to your question, don't stress it. We have an awesome session or a happy hour later today where you can ask your questions one-on-one over some beers. But with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm now going to ask each of you to quickly go one by one and give a very quick 30-second intro, name, org, and what you guys do.
Hello. Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name is Dennis. I work here at Sofar. I lead the product team for Wayfinder. So like Evan mentioned, we're the team that builds the B2B software for shipping companies to perform voyage optimization on the sea.
Hi, my name is Mitsutoshi. I work in MOL Switch, which is corporate venture capital of Japanese shipping company Mitsui O.S.K. Lines, and I'm in charge of investing in startup companies for clean tech.
Hi, I'm Ralph Matlack. I'm founder of Fourth Tack, early stage startup company. We're focused on ammonia bunkering, and we think ammonia is going to be a key pathway for decarbonizing shipping, and we have an approach that is better for.
Good afternoon, everyone. Colleen Liang, Director of Environmental Programs and Planning at the Port of Oakland. I've been at the port for 24 years, so if you do the math, I'm 30 years old. And I lead a team who manage environmental permitting and compliance, as well as land use and transportation planning, and also our sustainability and climate resilience goals at the Port of Oakland.
Hi, everyone. Pace Ralli, CEO, founder of Switch Maritime. We are building a fleet of vessels and trying to make those vessels get into the hands of existing operators. We're starting in the ferry sector right now. And our first flagship vessel is a hydrogen fuel cell ferry that's operating today in San Francisco Bay. And it's the first and only zero emissions ferry currently in the Bay. And yeah, we're looking to expand the fleet and get it into the hands of more operators around the country and hopefully globally.
All right, awesome for being so succinct here with your intros. All right, so our first question today for all of you, and we'll start with you, Pace, is just please tell us why we're here. Why are we talking about maritime energy and emissions? What are the drivers that are happening right now? Talk about from a voluntary, mandatory, like what's the forcing function right now?
Yeah, it's a really interesting industry to work in. I've been working in maritime since 2012. I came from the utility industry and finance before that, and I've just been learning about maritime through a friend who brought me into it, and first explained how much fuel his ship was using when we were on a backcountry ski trip, and I was just blown away by how much fuel is burned on a daily basis in just one ship. And so it's just, it's clearly not sustainable to keep that going. And, if the world trade and globalization continues on the path, like shipping is going to only grow. More and more trade around the country. Well, maybe not these days, but it hopefully, it'll probably revert. And so if we continue to follow that growth path, we're just looking at an inevitable growth in greenhouse emissions and other emissions. And so I think it's a good time for the industry to be looking at some of the nascent technologies. Some of them are not so nascent, but they're just new to the shipping industry. And it's going to be the build cycles, the renewal cycles of shipping are so long, and these financial decisions take years to make. And then once you get into a financial decision to build an asset, having that asset built takes a few years, and then by the time it's built, it's around for the next 40, 50. There's Great Lakes vessels that are 75 years old. I mean, these things are around for a long time. So you really have an embedded emissions. When you build that diesel boat in 2025, that's going to be a diesel boat that's running for the next 40, 50 years with those diesel emissions. So it's really important for us to be working on these technologies now so that we can start to work in the zero emissions boats into that renewal cycle.
Yeah, thanks, Pace. I'm going to give you my perspective from the port or the land side operations on driving towards the energy transition. So the first thing is the Port of Oakland. It sits right next to a underserved and disadvantaged community. And so there's a lot of concerns from our community members from the impacts from the maritime industry. So we're not going anywhere, the community's not going anywhere. So a lot of it is working together to find how we can coexist. And we've come a long way in partnering with that transition. Also, regulations. Regulation does drive the transition. From International Maritime Organization, who has goals and targets by 2050, to the state level. So here in California, we have the California Air Resources Board, who they have a regulation. We call it the at-berth rule. So when a ship comes, they have to plug in to shore power. And fortunately, we do at the Port of Oakland have that infrastructure for those vessels to, when they come to shore, they plug in so that they don't have to burn their fuel. So that regulations is something that drives that as well. Another regulation that's not by the state or local is the Port of Oakland. We have land use authority. So while we cannot require vessels or mandate vessels to transition towards an alternative fuel, also our maritime stakeholders, we do have an environmental ordinance. And in that environmental ordinance, it does require the tenants to submit what their cargo handling equipment is and what their plans are towards zero emissions. So again, we're not mandating our tenants to transition, but understanding what their plans are, because that way we could partner together and look for ways to provide that infrastructure to them. And then just so I don't take too much time, one more thing. And it's not just the maritime industry impacting climate change, but climate change also impacting the ports. So we are doing a study right now, a vulnerability study on what sea level rise impacts are to our land infrastructure, as well as groundwater intrusion impacts, because we have a lot of subsurface utilities that could be impacted if it's inundated with salt water for a long period of time or storm events. And so understanding that and preparing for the climate change is something that is kind of forcing us to transition to the energy.
So we've heard from Pace so far talking about long-term investment decisions. Colleen was just mentioning essentially regulatory aspects. Ralph, if you want to add anything additional that's driving this right now.
Just maybe a little bit more, kind of seconding the regulatory aspect of it. And I'm coming at it, really from the deep sea cargo kind of perspective. And certainly I view the IMO and the regulations that were just agreed to, at least at the IMO a few weeks ago, as the major forcing function. And so I think of it as just, it's a big bulldozer that is going to move the shipping industry through decarbonization. We just, started the ignition on the bulldozer, and it's going to move pretty slowly at first, but it's going to drive it. So that's the biggest factor right now. Hopefully, if technology advances, then we'll get some economic drivers and the regulatory stuff won't matter, but that's probably a ways off.
Mitsutoshi and Dennis, anything beyond the regulatory aspects you guys want to emphasize?
Oh, yeah. Regulatory is our first aspect. IMO, EU, California, and any other region. And on top of that, requirement from customer, like cargo owner, they also trying to achieve net zero and also reducing scope 3. So we need to follow their requirement. Also, we have self-driven aspect, which means it's a big challenge towards net zero target. But in the meantime, we believe it's a chance to make a new business. So shipping is our core business, but we are trying to expand our business opportunity in clean energy supply chain. For example, 2 years ago, MOL invested in blue ammonia production project in Louisiana. We are trying to expand such business as well.
I'll just add one last thing, which is I think the regulations basically increase the cost, obviously, of emitting CO2, and then technology, like the microelectronics that go into these grids, make it cheaper and possible to do things that were not economically feasible before. So we could not do really great voyage optimization until the last 5 to 10 years when the supply chain was in a state where we could measure and monitor the oceans the way we are starting to today.
Great. So many of you just mentioned IMO, which is the International Maritime Organization, which I think many of you are familiar with. They do set broadly the goals for the sector. And so currently we have a net zero target for 2050, as well as some interim targets between now and then. And so what are the different pathways that could potentially get us there? And let's just talk in broad terms for a moment. We'll dive into details in a second. But what are the different tools or solution sets we might be able to think about in terms of getting there in the next 10, 20, 30 years? Start with you, Dennis, or whoever wants to take it. Go ahead.
I'll start very broadly, because then I think that there's probably others that can jump in, in more depth. But, basically there's two main buckets. Ships use a lot of energy. The first bucket is, don't use as much energy, right? Efficiency. That's the number one. That's the lowest hanging fruit. That's, and there's a whole set of technologies, that can help you get there. Notably, some, like Wayfinder from Sofar. Then the other bucket is, okay, of the remaining energy that's left, how do you make that the least carbon intensive? And then there's a whole bunch of different pathways there. There's, I think probably the number one out of that, I would argue would be wind. It's free. And then there's a whole set of fuels, and there's a whole bunch of different fuels. Ammonia is one of them. There's a whole bunch of pathways there that can, have to give you that low carbon intensity energy. And then probably last on the list, hopefully, would be onboard carbon capture. So.
Yeah. So our customers are shipping companies, right? So they have an economic incentive. The way I think about it is, what is the game that they're trying to play? And they're trying to balance like short-term capital assets with like long-term capital assets. Like how do they use the ships they have today? How do they decide what to buy in the future? So there's a lot of short-term things, operational primarily, because you can't really modify these ships. And then it's navigating the fog of all of the technologies that are available today and the ones that'll be available in the next 20 to 30 years. And it's kind of like messy middle, right? Like we just don't know which ones are going to work. You have to do experiments. Some of our customers have sails, like flattener sails, rotor sails, wind sails on their ships that they're testing. And there's only 50 of them in the world. And they test it. They get a sense of how well they perform. They maybe don't perform in real life the exact same way that the manufacturers say that they will perform. And then it's about measuring and then trying to figure out which bet to take, which is what we've been actively trying to help them do by measuring the performance of all these new technologies at sea.
Awesome. Colleen?
Again, a perspective from the port side. Funding. Funding is a big deal for us to transition towards zero emissions. We have fortunately been awarded hundreds of millions of dollars of grant funding to help us with our tenant and maritime stakeholders to convert cargo handling equipment as well as drayage trucks to zero emissions, whether it's battery, electric, or hydrogen fuel cell. But that doesn't even dent in what the funding that's needed. It is expensive. And there is a lot of advanced technology out there. And sometimes we don't want to be the first, but we want to be the close second and see and learn from other people's demonstration projects. But funding is a big deal, and continuing to look at those opportunities to help us transition towards advancing our goals of zero emissions.
So maybe on to the next question here. So for Dennis, Ralph, and Pace specifically, Pace, you mentioned earlier on that these ships that we're building today will most likely be in operation out till 2050 or beyond. So we're talking about 20, 30 plus year long operating lives. And so what can a ship operator or owner deploy today? Like what is a safe, proven technology that we know works? What can we do right now?
So I think the new baseline that the industry is coming to slowly to terms with is still a fossil fuel, but a much less polluting fossil fuel, switching from heavy fuel oil and diesel to natural gas, LNG. So there's a growing portion of the global fleet that's switching over to natural gas. That's now considered, 10 years ago, we were building a natural gas terminal, the first one in the US to fuel ships, container ships going from Florida to Puerto Rico. And now we fuel ones that are going from LA to Honolulu. 10 years ago, that was like a new thing. We had to write new regulation with the Coast Guard. It was still considered not proven. Today, it's already considered sort of the safe bet. All right. So that's about a decade of working it through regulatory. And that's when you ask what's the, sort of the safe bet, I think a lot of ship owners, even Maersk was not toying with the idea. They invested a lot in the idea of methanol and green methanol, and even they have sort of reverted back in the past few years to say that they're actually going to go with LNG for a while until there's more global supply of the other fuel. So that's kind of the safe bet, and that is a big change. But I think the issue with ships is they use an incredible amount of energy, and they have a small footprint, a small amount of real estate to carry that energy with them. So you have to find fuels that are, that are going to have the energy density that they've had with diesel or something close to it, so they can carry that amount of energy they need for the range, crossing the ocean or other waterways. And so some of the other solutions are, looking at other energy carriers in other forms, and largely ammonia and methanol and hydrogen are sort of the right now the more tip of the spear fuels that the shipping industry is looking to experiment with. And the shipping industry doesn't, when I say shipping industry, I kind of mean the capital that's at risk, and the ship owners and the cargo handlers and cargo owners. They're only going to make decisions based on what's a sure thing. And so it's hard for them to know, like you refer to it as kind of the fog of what's out there. It's hard to know where the technologies, what's proven, where's the precedent, what has been done before, and then use all that information and make a decision on incorporating a lower carbon technology into their ship. And so, some of these other technologies and other fuel carrier, energy carriers that I mentioned are at that stage where they're just starting to create precedent. Okay, this has been done once, and now what ship types have been able to leverage, use that fuel. And so we're at the very early innings of that game.
So maybe let's switch over from fuels very quickly to talk about energy efficiency. I'll pass it over to you, Dennis, real quickly. So talk about the energy efficiency side. What can we deploy today? What's effective?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously the technology that can be installed on a ship, but I think the easiest thing is operational changes. So just a quick example, just of very briefly of what Wayfinder does is every day we send out guidance to captains and operators and give them a route suggestion change or a speed change that will help them navigate the future ocean conditions. And that's kind of new, not new in the sense that weather routing is new, but new in the sense that they're getting guidance based off of updated information in real time. And that's only really accessible and easy because of developing internet connection grids like Starlink and personal computers and the web technology stack. So that's operationally, you can get quite a lot. I think we say 4 to 8% on our site, but maybe Amanda can correct me.
So if you want to pass it down to Ralph and Colleen and Pace here for the next question. So energy efficiency can only get us so far. It's great. We absolutely need to use it. But a lot of these alternative fuels, which is absolutely critical for us to actually reach the targets we've set for ourselves in this industry, those are really the big levers we can pull on. Alternative fuels is absolutely essential. And so thinking about that, where are they? What are the fuels we can use right now? Pace touched on a few of them a little bit, but love to hear your thoughts, Ralph.
Yeah, let me try to take this through the lens of a ship owner. So if I'm a cargo ship owner and I'm sitting here today and I want to order a ship, and then so what are the choices ahead of me? So I'm sitting here and I want to order a ship. I'm going to order it today. I'll probably get it in 2028. So as soon as I get it, it's subject to all of the IMO regulations. It's going to be for the rest of its life. And then, as we pointed out, the useful life of a large cargo ship is usually around 25 years. So about halfway through that life, those regulations go from being very modest in the beginning to being I have to run that ship on at a carbon intensity that is anywhere from 65 to 80% lower than it is today. So right off the bat, I'm thinking, okay, I need to order a ship that's going to be capable of running on zero or near zero fuels in the future. That's just, I have to. It would be silly not to. That doesn't narrow it down too far though, because there's all sorts of drop-in fuels like biodiesel or a whole bunch of drop-in fuels, whether they're for say biodiesel or for LNG, either bio or E or whatever. So you still have this wide variety. The big ones. Biodiesel, there's LNG or methane, comes in various forms. There's methanol, and then there's ammonia. And those are the main ones for deep sea shipping. And so I'm thinking, projecting ahead a little bit to see well, what's that landscape going to look like for those fuels when I really need to use them at volume, like in 2040. And I'm just going to argue that I don't think the biofuels are going to be a very good option for you. All of the things that lead, the pathways that lead to a truly sustainable biofuel are going to be constrained in terms of volume, and they're going to face really stiff cross-sector competition notably from aviation, who are willing to pay a lot more than shipping is. So you have the biofuel option, which is not, is going to end up being pretty expensive. So then what is scalable? And the scalable ones are the e-fuels, right? The ones that are derived from green hydrogen synthesized with some other molecule to create it. And there you still have a lot of options. You have e-LNG or e-methane, you have e-methanol, you have e-ammonia. But amongst those, hands down, the most economical, the most scalable one is going to be ammonia. So if I'm that ship owner, I'm thinking for the lifetime of my ship, the best bet is actually ammonia, which is not the thing that is the most prevalent choice today. And it's a really hard decision to make. And I'm trying to the crystal ball kind of got uncloudy for me for a moment, but I could there's good counter arguments as well.
So speaking of counter arguments, very quick, we'll pass it to Colleen next, actually. But before that, actually, if we could just get Mitsutoshi, if you could comment from the vessel owner operator side.
Let me share our solution for the time being. We are most of vessels are still consuming heavy fuel. But currently already LNG engine is available, methanol engine is available. So we are already operating some methanol driven vessel, but still it's limited to methanol tankers because methanol is widely available, but still not available for fuel, maritime fuel. We are consuming methanol on board, which is cargo actually. So this is one, and the other one is LNG. Recently we are building more and more LNG carrier, but of course we should be the transition fuel because LNG is still producing CO2 or methane.
Excellent. And so, Colleen, from your viewpoint as a port, so much of maritime decarbonization is going to have to happen on shore. So how are ports preparing for this? Are these fuels available, or is there still a lot of challenges remaining?
Yeah, both. But I do want to do a shameless plug, but a lot of people don't realize that Port of Oakland, yes, we have maritime operations, but we also own and operate the Oakland airport. So I want to, on Ralph's point about sustainable fuels, it is more advanced, I would say, in the aviation sector, as we're using some sustainable aviation fuels right now in the aircraft, and it's a drop-in fuel. But going back to the port side, yes, the infrastructure isn't there. We, again, don't mandate the type of fuel used for vessels, but we're monitoring what's out there. And something Ralph mentioned about ammonia, also, let me take a step back. Also, at Port of Oakland, we don't do bunkering, but we know there's an interest that has been coming to us from stakeholders. That being said, fuel like ammonia, there is a concern out there, both from our management as well as from regulatory agencies. And not knowing a lot about it, I think there's just has to be a lot of conversation at the table for them to understand the benefits, the safety concerns or lack of safety concerns, the emissions that come from that. But from the land side, cargo handling equipment, trucks, we do see that battery electric is advancing more than a hydrogen fuel cell. We do have a facility that's right next to the Port of Oakland. I think it's the largest in the country. It's a hydrogen fueling depot. And we also have 30 hydrogen fuel cell trucks that are demonstrating in the port. And we thought that hydrogen will advance, at least going towards zero emissions, but it does appear that battery electric is advancing faster than hydrogen fuel cell. But the thing is, it can't just happen at the ports. It has to happen either countrywide, internationally, because they can't just fuel or charge at our ports. Wherever they're going, they also have to charge, fuel, and operate as there as well. So there's a lot of discussions, partnering with other ports, talking to California emissions commissions and other state agencies and federal agencies as well, to really make sure that that infrastructure is there for when ships or landside equipment can operate and advance.
Great. So Pace, maybe direct this next one at you. When we think about these alternative fuels, of course, nothing is perfect in this world. And so what are the trade-offs that we need to think about? Like what's most important for someone making a decision to choose one fuel or the other?
Yeah, it's funny. the shipping industry kind of acts like it's waiting for a silver bullet to be revealed and like, oh, this is the answer. And then like, let's all jump in and go for that. And I think probably what's coming out is that it's going to be a mix of different solutions. And some of the, they all have trade-offs. I mean, you nailed it. I mean, nothing's perfect. But for certain types, certain fuels really do actually fit a type of operational profile. I'll sort of talk about it at a high level. Battery electric is really making a ton of progress. And it's, for onshore activity and for even smaller scale vessel propulsion and shorter routes, that could be a really good fit if you can fit enough battery on board. Clearly, even without fuel switching, like entirely electrifying a vessel off a battery, that's one thing, but there's a massive growth potential of battery storage on board vessels, just as we we should talk about hybrid as a solution too. Like it's a big improvement if you go to a diesel hybrid vessel using batteries. And so that's where there'll be a big growth potential for batteries. But when you're trying to think about fuel switching and not creating the carbon to begin with, you're looking at these zero carbon fuels like ammonia, hydrogen, and methanol, green methanol, and they all have trade-offs. So largely, fuel availability is like, the biggest starting point. Like where can you get this fuel? How much can you get it? Can it actually be produced efficiently and cost effectively enough to fuel the global fleet? And I think Ralph's point is right. I think ammonia is a really good fuel for, ocean going vessels, widely available globally. And that's, just access to that type of fuel is one thing. And then for smaller scale kind of harbor craft, hydrogen might be a good fit because, especially if it's passenger related, ammonia is going to be a tough regulatory hurdle to get over just because of the toxicity issues if there's any accidents. And so hydrogen might be a really good fit for that, but it's not a good fit for, smaller scale battery electric things or vessels that are going across the ocean. You just can't pack enough energy of hydrogen. So I think ammonia and methanol are sort of considered the ocean going vessel fuels of the future, harbor craft, battery electric, and hydrogen.
So you touched on very briefly some of the aspects around ammonia specifically. So we'll pass it to Ralph here next as our ammonia expert. The most common question when ammonia comes up is toxicity, as Pace just suggested. So, talk about that very quickly. What are the safety aspects of ammonia?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly toxic, but I'll throw out kind of like try to just come at it from maybe a different angle. I don't view as safety as a trade-off. I don't think that anyone is saying we'll accept less safety on our cargo ship running ammonia than our methanol ship. I think that it's just a question of of fuel handling. How much are you going to spend operationally on CapEx to achieve the safety that you want? And so certainly ammonia requires more rigorous safety procedures and higher cost, kind of CapEx to be able to achieve that high level of safety. But it's possible. You can achieve a high level of safety with all of these fuels that we've mentioned. So that's, I guess, one thing. One other thing I'll just say kind of really, kind of related to ammonia. One of the big trade-offs is its energy density. It has a lot of energy density relative to some things, but volumetrically, you need about 3 times the volume of ammonia for the energy equivalent of current fuel oil. And so, at glance, you'd say, oh man, that's going to be like a big hit to cargo volume. I have not seen. I've seen a lot of designs for ammonia ships, and I have not seen any that have really taken like a hard hit on cargo volume at all. You might take a little hit on range or something like that, but in some cases you take there's designs that I've seen that take no cargo volume hit at all, just by rearranging things.
So you hit on our next question here exactly, which is energy efficiency, and I'll direct it to you, Mitsutoshi. So because some of these alternative fuels don't have the same energy density as what we would traditionally use, like a heavy fuel oil, what can a vessel operator do to make up for that energy efficiency, or make up for that lack of energy density rather?
Yeah, firstly, I totally agree with your opinion. Yeah, low energy density must reduce cargo volume intake, which affect our revenue. So it's important. Yeah, one of important thing is it's very simple to try to reduce fuel consumption. So improving fuel efficiency is quite important, and actually we are trying best. One example is we are utilizing wind assist technology, like wind mast or rotor sailing, or also we adopt next generation propeller, so which is kind of a different shape of existing propeller. And we are working very closely, very deeply with Sofar Ocean. We are operating 900 vessels in the world. And actually now Sofar Ocean provides us their wayfinder to our 300 vessels. And already know, their service is digital-based voyage optimization and fuel optimization. And in our internal record, compared to 2023, last year, we reduced 2% of our GHG emission by utilizing Sofar Ocean's services, which equivalent to more than $10 million because of fuel reduction and time saving. So yeah, it's contributing a lot to saving fuel.
Excellent. So Dennis, maybe kind of passing off to you next. If a lot of the efficiency improvements that Mitsutoshi just mentioned relate to operational behaviors, and you mentioned that yourself earlier, how big an aspect is data to that? So is there a data challenge right now, or a lack of data that would help improve any of our models or operational behaviors that could help further reduce emissions in shipping?
Yeah, so I'll go back to the accessibility of information from on board. So I think recently there's been more and more data from sensors on board because of the access that Starlink and other providers have. And those pieces of data are really valuable to us for two reasons. One is vessel modeling. The better we can figure out the speed-fuel relationship of the ship in different like Beaufort conditions, the better we can find efficiency. And then more data through the buoys or more sensors allows us to find efficiency by decreasing uncertainty, by making our models more and more accurate over time. So over a 26-day, 27-day vessel crossing, you can have certainty that the conditions, not certainty, less uncertainty on the conditions ahead of you. So we found that more data is better.
So Colleen, I'll direct this one to you next, but from a port operator side, things like just-in-time arrival, other kind of aspects, like how does data fit into you all from a port operator?
Yeah, data is very, very important as the vessels continue to be modernized, they get larger. I mentioned earlier we have shore power infrastructure. So when they're plugging in, we need to understand how much power they're going to draw, because that's from the water side. And from the land side, if we're converting all our equipment and the trucks to zero emission, specifically battery electric, we need to understand how much power they draw as well. I'm not sure if I mentioned at the Port of Oakland, we do provide utility. We're a utility provider as well. So that will to get all this data will help us plan better on do we have the power capacity? We need to work with our tenants on the type of equipment that they're bringing in. How long do they need to charge? Can they charge off hours when the vessels are not plugging in? So by getting all this data, it will help us plan better and build for the energy capacity that's needed. So yes, data is very important, very, very important.
Excellent. And so I'm going to wrap up the formal remarks here of this panel here with this final question. We'll just go one by one down the line here. But presumably many of the folks in this room are interested in the maritime sector, I would hope. And so for those folks that are trying to break into it or just figure out what they can best do to help support maritime decarbonization, what recommendations do you have for those folks?
It really comes down to the shipping industry is serving their customer, and the customer's the cargo. owner, and the biggest influence on what financial decisions and asset, decisions that ship owners make is based on what their customers want, because they want to stay in business. And if their customers want a lower carbon scope 3 emissions, then that's what they'll require. And so I think, the biggest influence is, obviously the regulatory, and the shipping industry is kind of funny because the IMO self-regulates. It doesn't really fall under anyone's jurisdiction. So it's just an industry, essentially a group that gets together and say, what are we going to choose to do? And so, yeah, like somehow, getting the influence through the customers and then having that filter through the shipping industry is really important. And getting into the industry is, if it's, from an engineering perspective, there is no shortage of need. I mean, we need more brain power put towards this. So yeah, I mean, finding businesses that are taking on a certain aspect and just, finding where their gaps are and helping fill in. It's an interesting time.
Yeah. I mean, basically Pace said it very succinctly of what I was going to say. And just adding to that is just communication and really partnering with ports, talking to the tenants, talking to the shipping lines, because we're all in this together and it's not just one sector or one category just going off and doing zero emissions themselves. It's a collaborative process. And so I think what Pace mentioned, that you just really need to talk to everyone. We don't have customers per se, but we have what we like to call our maritime stakeholder group.
Okay, I'll go narrow on this to a particular audience. I think you'll figure out who this is. But I'm going to say that the best way to get into it is follow the money. And we've talked about how much fuel the shipping industry uses. It's about a $200 billion industry, just kind of looking at fuels, and all of that is going to get completely upended over the next 25 years, but most of it's going to get upended in the next 10 years. And the incumbents do not have an unassailable advantage, sitting in a well-protected castle. So if you're an investor, don't overlook the space.
When we think about clean energy, actually there is already new technology, but question is cost and scalability. For example, currently when we talk about the price of green fuel, like green methanol or green ammonia, whatever, the calorie base, such prices like double or even triple compared to heavy fuel. So it actually doesn't work at this moment. Yeah. So what we have to do is we need to support entrepreneur or new technology. But in the meantime, we are facing difficulty or uncertainty for the government support, especially US. And so I think more and more support from private sector, like venture capital or large corporate, should support to such technology development. Yeah.
All right, Dennis, bring us home. And for any folks that have questions, please start getting ready to ask them. We'll get to you guys in here in a minute.
Cool. So just speaking from the perspective of a relative newcomer to the space, I have 6 months here so far and 6 months in the space. I think it's just get involved in the things that you're interested in, things that you value. There's a lot of companies hiring, we're hiring. I'm sure everyone here is hiring as well. And it's about finding the right fit for your interests.
Excellent. All right, so quick, 5-10 minutes for your questions and answers. Cool.
Cool. Hi, Ann Carpenter, Braid Theory. We advise early stage companies all in the maritime and blue economy sector. My question is, there are now more than 60 green and digital shipping corridors around the world. Oakland and Yokohama, LA, Long Beach, and Shanghai and Singapore. And this seems to be all on the policy, but it speaks to your question about if you can't do something on one end and not have it happening in the other. But I'm seeing very little actual correlation between these announcements of these corridors and actually supporting the technology and the pilot projects and the innovation that actually needs to happen to make these corridors effective. What do we do about that? What's going on?
Well, first, I need to talk to my communications department if you haven't heard a lot about the green shipping corridor, although it sounds like you know about Port of Oakland and Port of Yokohama, our MOU with them. Right now, we are just starting the initial discussion. So we've been having monthly meetings with or I should say quarterly, not monthly, quarterly meetings with Port of Yokohama. We've had 3 so far on just understanding the decarbonization projects that they're working on and the projects that we're working on and just sharing information. So that MOU is right now is talking and sharing information. They're more advanced on the water side. We're more advanced on the land side. So it's just learning from each other and the projects that are implementing and moving forward. We did hire a consultant to help us advance that green shipping corridor. So it can't just be the port to port talking. There's also the shipping lines that we need to talk to. There's also the trucking association that we need to talk to, the terminals. So that's the next step. And so that's still in development on how to bring them to the table. Because to your point, we can't decarbonize without without more action and more involvement and activating the real green shipping corridor. So that's in the works for Port of Oakland.
Anyone else want to talk on green corridors?
I'll give a little bit of an alternate perspective on green corridors. I haven't seen any real movement, them make any kind of real movement. I mean, I think it's great for the good collaboration, but all the movement you see is based on, you know, like a smaller set of folks getting together to drive something that has a commercial purpose. And so, I mean, I've participated in some workshops with green corridors, and they're frustratingly slow. So yeah.
Other questions from the audience? Just raise your hand. We'll bring over the speaker to you. Got an awesome group of folks up here. Anyone have any questions? Anyone back? I can go to my backup questions. If no one has any.
Here.
Got someone back there. Don't get to you.
Quick question. Does the maritime industry have a sense of what would happen if this decarbonization was successful and that heavy fuel oil is still being produced? Does it get routed somewhere else, or does the industry pick it up in other ways?
Good question. I was just
Yeah, so like what happens to the residual fuel oil? That's a good question, right? Because it's already the bottom of the barrel. And if no one wants the bottom of the barrel, then what happens? Well, the fossil fuel companies have a toxic waste disposal problem on another one on their hands. I don't think there's any there. I mean, I think we've exhausted the uses for, you know, residual fuel oil. Asphalt is kind of like the next in line.
Anyone else want to take that one? No? We have a gentleman over here that had a question.
Okay. So I just speak into it?
Yes.
I guess it's for Dennis or Morishita-san, if you could comment a little bit on, you know, you mentioned 2% improvement, right? Obviously you want, I mean, which is great, but I think you want to get to Dennis 8, right? Or more, right? What is impeding that, or how is that, what is being done to get from the 2 to the 8+%? Because what the space where a ship lives, right, is an extraordinary complex and dynamic environment. I mean, the bottom of the atmosphere, the bottom 10 meters and the top 10 meters of the ocean are extraordinary, dynamic and diverse, and extraordinarily difficult to measure, right? Especially when you have a ton ship going through exactly where you want to actually take your measurement. So I was just wondering if you could comment on how to go from the 2% to the 8+%, because then that's when, you know, to Ralph's point, that's when the real money start flowing in, right?
Maybe. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So for us, I think we think about it in terms of like a stack of things that have to happen over time. So at the very bottom, we need to add more spotters and more observations into the ocean. That will give us a better sense of current conditions and historical conditions, which we don't have, right? And then on top of that, there's obviously the weather modeling. And we benefit a lot from like NOAA and ECMWF models, which we then use data assimilation techniques to like take the data that we have and then like ground them more closely to what the observations that we see. And that has many dimensions of improvement. Based on more data points, we can obviously do a little bit better. We can improve our modeling itself. We can rebuild those models using new techniques. I think yesterday, our CEO was on a AI panel around weather modeling. That's a potential avenue. And then at the very top of it is adherence. Like we work with MOL. MOL is an amazing partner. We have very high adherence rates with their fleet. They see the potential of and the savings, and the captains and the operators on their teams work really hard to give us feedback and tell us when we're working and not working. But adherence is not consistent across all of our customers. And that's something that we're working towards as well.
Any other questions? We got one more. Oops, sorry,
Can I add?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I said we use their Wayfinder to our 300 vessels at this moment. But I would say like average number was 200 vessels in the full year basis. And that 200 vessels contributed 2% reduction of entire our company's reduction. So what we are thinking is to increase our vessel, which utilize Wayfinder, so that yeah, they contribute a more reduction, like 4%, 5%, even more, which I believe. So. Yeah.
We have one last question, and then if you do have any other questions, we'll get to you guys during happy hour later this evening. One more right here.
Question? It's a softball question here, because Colleen Rod with the Department of formerly with the Department of Commerce. It seems, and we want to talk about the green shipping lines. Right?
Very quickly, Rod, I just want to say you have what 30 plus years in federal service, so just want to give him a round of applause for all he's done here. So good.
So it seems to me like with these green shipping arrangements that we have in China and Japan, our friends here are playing host, could play a role in that efficiency for ONE, MOL, all these Japanese carriers to make those shipping lanes, lines more efficient and play a role in this green corridor shipping play.
Any comments, or is it firm agreement?
I'd say yes. I think that every major container liner is already using some kind of route optimization, whether in-house or somewhere else. But I do want to underscore the adherence. You know, and so if some people aren't sure what that means, it means that you have to influence the people that are running the ship, the crew on the ship in the middle of the ocean to do something. They're the ones who are going to actually have the influence to follow those directions or not. And so if you're developing a solution, you have to include that human factor. How do you nudge those folks in the right way, in a positive way? Otherwise, it's just like, man, the best technology is just not gonna, it's just gonna disappear.
So I'm gonna spring a pop quiz question on y'all. It's a little bit of a cliffhanger for our audience here, but I want each of you to just give a very, very quick name one technology that you think will be a game changer for the maritime sector if it comes true. Give you 5 seconds to think about it. Oh, this is already good to go.
Small scale nuclear.
All right.
Gosh, I don't, going against what you were saying, a battery electric ocean going vessel.
All right.
I'm going to go with a combination of alternative ammonia with solid oxide fuel cell and a new generation of propulsor.
Very specific, all right.
Yeah. Or the large scale vessel, I think battery and nuclear.
I'm recently obsessed with like hydrofoils. So I think there's a company in Sweden called Candela building hydrofoils for ferries
Yep.
that basically use batteries. And then because there's less resistance when you are 3 feet above the water and no wake, you can use much less energy to go a much farther distance.
I think we have a few hydrofoiling boat startups in the room. I think if anyone wants to raise their hand on those. No one asked my opinion, but I'm also going to go with SMR, second pace here, and whoever also mentioned Nuke. So anyways, that's our panel. Give a round of applause for all our speakers today. Great views, great opinions. Pass it back to Evan here. I think we're taking a quick break, and then we'll switch over to the next panel.
Thank you, David, and all the panelists. You can all take a very quick break, stay in your seats if you can, run to the restroom if you need to. We're going to get set up for the next panel on resilience in the blue economy as quickly as we can so we can get to happy hour after that. Thank you.